What's up, guys? Welcome to episode 15 of the Firefighters Podcast. I'm proud to bring you a special guest, a good friend of mine, firefighter Al Barry. Al's got a very interesting story. He took a different route to the fire department than what we usually hear. If you grew up in New York City and you are of a certain age, you're going to recognize his voice instantly. So let me bring him in. Here he is, ladies and gentlemen, Al Barry.
Good morning. That used to be my handle anyway.
Yeah. If you don't know, Al used to work on the Hot 97 morning show with Ed Lover and Dr. Dre here in New York City for many years.
East Coast Dr. Dre.
East Coast.
Formerly of Yo MTV Raps. A lot of people confuse him.
Right. He won't be performing with Eminem at the Super Bowl this year. No. But so let's get into it, man. How does someone go from a successful career in the morning show? Because that was the biggest show we had in New York City at the time, right?
Number one in our targeted demographics for 5 years straight. The whole time that they were on the air at Hot 97.
What was your role there?
I started as the phone op.
Right.
I need to go back a little bit. I upon graduation from University of New Paltz, SUNY, I kind of spent from April to December knocking on every door in New York City radio trying to get a job in radio, which I didn't really need to knock on any doors. So I was playing at my local gym mill, the Talk of the Town Lounge in Great Kills, shooting darts on a cold December night. And I ran into the brother of the executive producer of the morning show at that time, which the morning show was Howard Hoffman and Stephanie Miller, which they were about to end their 5-year run there. Got the interview by running home and getting my resume and giving it to him. And 2 weeks later, I was the phone op of the morning show at that time. 4 weeks later, the morning show was blown out. And I was advanced to associate producer. Worked with Ricky Ricardo in the morning, who's now the voice of the Philadelphia Eagles radio broadcasts. He also does the Spanish end of the New York Yankees for ESPN radio. So worked with him until he was considered the interim morning show host, as they knew they were going to change the format, which was a top 40 dance radio station, Hot 97. And they knew they were going to flip it to a hip hop radio station, one of the very first in the nation at that time, which happened in November of 1993.
Now, were you a hip hop guy? I know you're a big music guy, but
not at all. Was not a hip hop guy at all. But it's not just the music; it's a culture,
right?
Like any other genre of music, it becomes part of your life. And hip hop has many different elements to it. But the morning show, they brought in Ed Lover and Dr. Dre in the morning and teamed those two guys up with Lisa Glassberg, known as Lisa G, who went on after that to a couple other radio stations. And Howard Stern, she actually worked for Stern, our competition at that time.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I did 5 years. I worked my way up to executive producer of that show, and that show did its time. How did I become a fireman? Well, I was, before I went to New Paltz, I did a little time at University of Dayton in Ohio. And my oldest brother, who's 11 years older than I, was a fireman, 37 engine 40 truck, heart of Harlem. Life begins at 40, right?
Yeah.
Shout out to those guys, 125th Street. He sent me a plane ticket to come home and take the test for the fire department. And the test that I had taken was the one that
sounds
was
very
delayed.
familiar.
Yeah, that test was delayed numerous years due to the 5 points that the Long Island people wanted to get for being New York City residents. And that's kind of why I got to do what I wanted to do in radio, and did lots of things there. I was actually a character on the show, as we alluded to earlier. And this time, 20 odd years ago, I was at Super Bowl 30 as a field correspondent for the morning.
Nice.
And
was that Brett Favre? Was that the
that
Favre
was
Super Bowl? Or
that
Steelers?
was that was Steelers Cowboys. Cowboys won. That was the Super Bowl with Diana Ross flying down in the helicopter.
Oh, okay.
But that was So I did a whole lot of things. They featured me as part of one of their promotions called Al Barry's Boogie Down Bash and Barbecue at Universal Studios in Florida, where they sent 300 listeners down by plane for a 4-day, 3-night stay with a concert of hip hop artists. That was another.
That had to be fun.
Thing. So
yeah,
I did everything I wanted to do in radio in that 6.5 years that I worked there, and took the test. After I got 100 on the physical. I think I got a 99 on the written. But that put me in the last class of 98. I actually had to get my eyes fixed before I could take the test, before I could advance to probationary fire school. So I actually missed 3 classes.
3 classes, wow.
Yeah, I would have been in the first class of 98, but that wouldn't have fitted into my timeline. So everything works out for a reason.
and it could have changed your other timeline too. So you don't know where you would have ended up 3 years later. So I had a similar situation with myself. I hadn't graduated college yet when they called me. Mm-hmm. So I turned it down because I was in the middle of my last semester. Who's going to leave after spending all that money, right?
Right.
So I pushed it back. I think I could have gone in February and then May, and I pushed it back to July. And so
there it is.
I ended up in a different place also,
Yeah.
You never know.
Such is life, right? Such is life.
But I have to say, I've heard a lot of stories of what guys did during that great wait, as we call it.
That's great.
If you're not from New York, it was a long time without hiring firefighters. It was from Dinkins through Giuliani, right? That nobody got hired for like 7 years.
Right, 7 years.
A lot of people, like my brother, joined the police department or corrections or sanitary or some sort of city job just to start your clock for your pension. But everybody was waiting to get on the fire department. But I think Al's got probably the coolest story I've heard so far. Good
times were had.
Yeah. So then you went to the academy and you ended up, did you start out in 65 or did you end up in?
Yes, that was my assigned house. At that time, the rotation was in full effect. The ABC house rotation. March, I guess we came out, and it was around, I'm going to say June or July, that they sent us to our B house, which was for me a truck, ladder 161, engine 245, battalion 43, Coney Island.
Yeah.
And the rotation, they say 6 months, and then they send you back. I spent almost a year and a half in Coney Island.
Yeah. I think I went out for 2 months and that was it.
Yeah. And then I went to 165 engine, 85 engine in Newdorp, Staten Island.
Yep. Our old neighborhood.
Maybe there for 5 months and then went back to engine 65. Was, I guess, late July of 2001.
All right.
Yeah.
So before we go down the road a couple months, I always want to ask you this. Did your hip hop friends ever show up at the firehouse? And, because your firehouse is in Midtown Manhattan, if people don't know. So they're right in the thick of it all. If you're watching this video, you can see the picture that Al has up that looks like Rockefeller Center behind
sure is
behind that
2008
beautiful rig there, the Midtown Mob.
Yeah, that's us.
But did anybody ever stop by and break chops? And what were the other guys' reactions to seeing rappers come in the Firehouse?
Well, I kept it on the down low so much. Once I got to the Firehouse, a lot of older guys. When I got to the Firehouse, a couple of the younger guys knew. When you get to the Firehouse, right? You bring your cake, your cigars. Hey, what'd you do for a living?
Right.
I worked in radio. Oh, you worked in radio. What the hell are you doing here? And that kind of thing. And then it's, have you ever listened to hip hop? No, of course not. All these old timers, they're watching the ticker on the TV, checking their numbers. But a few guys, were in tune, and they hipped everybody to where I was from. But that all goes to the side when you get to the Firehouse. They want to know what you're about, what you're all about, and what kind of person you are. That didn't. I really didn't make it a thing, at all. Had Flavor Flav stop by the Firehouse. Of all people.
Of all people.
He stopped by the house. Now, I had relations with Flavor and his family from the Boogie Down Bash and Barbecue that I was the face of for Hot 97. And Flavor took over the radio station one morning, demanding to go to the Boogie Down Bash. And that's how we became friends. We took the flight down there together. But he stopped by with his clock and was taking lots of pictures. And that was fun. Yeah.
I'd imagine that had to go over well. And that was probably at his height, right? Of his
certainly craziness. Was. What was that? VH1. He was on the TV show there.
The Flavor of Love, was that it?
The Flavor of Love, right?
I can't imagine.
Oh, right. Yeah. Bridget Nielsen, right? That was crazy. Anyway, yeah.
All right. I can imagine the conversations at the kitchen table after he left, but so let's jump right into it now. As you alluded to earlier, you got back to 65 in the summer of 2001. And a big part of the reason I wanted to have you on is not because of your backstory, which I think is one of the most interesting I've heard from firemen. Just to let people know out there that we come from all over the place, all fields. We have doctors, writers, lawyers, executive producers of number one morning shows, lowly English majors like myself. We have all sorts of types that come onto our job. But Al was working in Midtown on September 11th. And if you don't mind, I just want the people to know out there that when I ask people to tell their 9/11 story, I don't do it lightly. I know how hard it is. And I think it's important to tell people these stories. And I thank Al. Before he gets going, I just want to thank him for sharing this with us because I know it's hard. But go ahead, buddy. Walk us through it.
Yeah. You got to share the story.
Yeah.
To vet the demons, if you will.
And not just every September. We got to tell these stories. It's February right now. So.
Yeah. Well, I was tending bar in Midtown, moonlighting, or your second job, if you will. Mm-hmm. I had a bartending position on 44th Street between 2nd and 3rd. And I slept over that night after my bartending position, and so I was already there, and we got the tones a little bit before 9 a.m. and we were I think we were fifth due on the 5th alarm or first due on 5th alarm to the towers to report to the North Tower. So, we were ready to go because we already did our roll call and rig was already checked by me. So I knew everything was there. And so down we went down the West Side Highway, made great time, fantastic time on, on a bright Tuesday morning. Crosstown traffic always sucks, but we made it right across to the West Side, came right down. That's when the second plane had hit. My boss at the time, Lieutenant Tom Piombino, he rapped on the window and popped it open and said, "I don't know what the fuck we got, but we got something that's a whole lot different than what we're normally doing, boys. So saddle up." And as the junior man, kind of fresh to 65. Yeah, I'm saddling up. I'm ready to roll.
Yeah.
So we got down to the foot of the North Tower, and pandemonium was breaking loose already, and we got our assignment to make our way up to the North Tower.
Had you seen any jumpers at that point?
No. Getting your gear together, we all took an extra roll up, an extra bottle.
Right.
So, we were pack rats at that point.
Yeah.
Making our way up. As we're going in, that's when you heard them. And
that's why. Yeah. If you don't know, that's what people misconstrued as gunfire, right? That's what we heard.
Right.
I remember hearing over the radio, we got shots fired, but it was really the explosions of the jumpers hitting the concrete.
Yeah, the people. So as we're walking in, you saw pieces of bodies, all different conditions. Legs, heads, torsos, and some were burnt. Terrible, just terrible. So it was, for me, thinking back to that, and I've told this story numerous times, and it's like, that didn't really faze me. I'm going to a fire. I got to get to the fire. I was the nozzle man that day. And didn't know what the shots fired were, but in hindsight, learned.
You were in there. For those of us who weren't in there yet, that's what we were hearing,
Yeah. Well, those bangity banger bangs, that was all people landing. Whew. So we made our way up the, I believe was the B stairwell coming in from West Street, and proceeded to climb up the North Tower. And we got to about the 16th floor when what we thought were all the elevators being recalled was actually the South Tower collapsing. And, radio silence basically was in effect. There was no radios going on. Now, as we've learned, there were reports of no radio transmission being heard on the upper floors. So our radios were still working, but at that point, during the collapse of the South Tower, it was silence. And that silence comes into play a little later as I tell this to you. So we thought all of them were being recalled, and we kind of didn't make anything big of it, but we didn't know that the South Tower was collapsing. I guess that's what I'm trying to get out. So we climbed up to about the 22nd floor when we got the Mayday to remove ourselves from the North Tower, imminent collapse. Now, 22nd floor is something that is said that the radios did not work past the 22nd floor. So that's kind of a key number for us anyway, because we were not energetic making our way up the North Tower in any way to say it, because our boss, Lieutenant Tom Piambino, he had a knee condition. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of like every 5 floors, we had to kind of chill out a little bit, let his knees kind of rest a little bit, right, which was to our advantage.
and you're carrying about 150 pounds.
Yeah,
and we're
some of that gear went by the wayside, I'll tell you. Once we got around the tent.
All right.
So with that said, we made our way back down upon hearing the Mayday and notifying other guys as they're coming up, because there were still guys coming up. And they were, even though we verbalized that there's a Mayday, they still, we're going up. You know how the men do. We have our assignment. We got to do what we got to do. So on our way down, it was very orderly. It was not pandemonium coming down. The civilians were making their way down as we were making our way up. And on our way down, the civilians were, it was a very orderly fashion. Certain floors, there were no lights, and some people were, I guess, fatigued and needed help, which we tried to do. We would administer a little bit of air from our packs and, get them moving. So, yeah, made our way down. I would say around the 3rd floor, there was signs of a breach of the building where we had to remove some rubble from the stairwell. And that was kind of when the light bulb went off. Gee, there's maybe that 16th floor recall. There was something more, right, something more to that, which we were about to find out. Upon hitting the lobby floor, it was pandemonium at that point. It was walking into the war zone. My boss he gathered us together and said, let's just make our way out, because there's no way, I can't see where we can get any other information at this point, because it was crazy. So we went out.
Could you physically see anything at that point? Or was it just blacked out smoke, or dust?
No, there really wasn't. There really wasn't any smoke. It was, like I said, around the 3rd floor. There was some rubble,
right,
from a wall being pushed out. But that was really it at that point. Don't know what that rubble was, because, the North Tower did not collapse, but something happened in that area. But once we got to the lobby area, it was crazy. People were running amok. It was nutty. But my boss said, let's all go out. We went out the same way we came in, onto West Street. There was a chief there that was screaming, "Everybody go north, go north." He had a bullhorn in his hand, but he wasn't using the bullhorn. So, you could see it in his face. There was something going on. If you look to the left, you could see there was, it was Beirut. There was a problem.
Right.
And we really didn't, for me personally, there was no time to actually process that. Because as we took a few more steps, you looked up and the building was coming down. And that was easily processed. We started, running, running north. And everybody got scattered at that point from my company. I dove behind a police car. And moments later, I had a pile of people on top of me. And that's, the North Tower had collapsed. And talk about the silence and such things, that it was slow motion, really. the process. I didn't watch it come down. I saw it once as it was coming down, and knew I needed to get the hell out of there.
Yeah.
As it was coming down, the silence was just amazing. Is it a slow motion process of your mind? That's probably what it is, and your mind filtering out things as you're trying to run for cover,
Right. So the people were just run, like, I'd imagine people were still running at this point. They were just running in silence.
From West Street, from the North Tower, everybody. It was, and you're kind of not paying attention. I can't say I'm scanning to see what's going on. I'm doing my thing. I gotta go. I guess once the tower had collapsed, I'm laying on the bottom of like 8 or 9 people, could be more, however high, to protect people from underneath a police car. So maybe it's less, maybe it's 6, 7. Right. I'm on the bottom of it all. My Viber alert went off on the bottle, and that's when people started peeling off of me. Once I was able to get up, I cleaned out my mask, was able to shut off the Viber alert, and I administered air to the people that were surrounding me. Then the big black cloud came. Mm-hmm. And once again, that silence, just amazing. You're not hearing anything. You're just trying to process it all, I guess.
Right. Especially downtown Manhattan on a weekday morning is as loud as you're going to get it, right?
I would think so. But, you got to keep in mind that South Tower had already collapsed too. Mm-hmm. So, I would assume a lot of civilians, everybody was gone already from that area. You had a half hour's time between the South Tower collapse and the North Tower collapse. So it's a great question as to, what was going on before that South Tower collapsed on the west side, on West Street.
Right. But you also had people fleeing other buildings, not just the Trade Center.
Great point.
Every building in downtown Manhattan. So they might have left Water Street and were waking their way up and running past you by that point,
Great point. Yeah.
So, I mean, we'll never know the exact number, but it's
right.
Definitely.
So my Rig 65 engine, when my chauffeur Armando Reno dropped us off, he went down to Liberty Street, and I think he hooked up with the chauffeur from one engine, and because one engine already was hooked up, and so the chauffeur was helping out 65 and hooked up 65. But 65 got crushed by the South Tower. It was found a couple of days before Christmas, 2001. And it was about, I think, 6 stories below grade, 65. And all crushed. If I knew how to utilize this Facebook, Zoom thing, I would show you a couple of pictures and stuff, but I'm trying to work that out a little earlier. But.
Send them to me and we'll put them up so that people.
Now, Armando Reno was on the cover of the Newsday the next morning. He's the upside down guy that all the firemen are pulling out of the rubble, missing his teeth.
Oh yeah, I've seen.
Yeah,
I've seen that.
That was the show for 65.
All right. Did he actually start flowing water or?
That I don't know. I would assume he was hooked up and ready to go. Did he hook up to a standpipe? I don't know. You have to get Armando on here.
Yeah, absolutely. We do.
He's somewhere in Las Vegas, I'm sure, at this time. But I know he's alive and well. His son, Mike Reno, was, last time I remember, was a 55 engine.
Okay.
So his son's on the job as a fireman. He might be an officer now. I'm not sure.
All right. Well, we'll have to check in with him and
Jack.
get his side of the story.
Yeah.
So, what did you do after that? Did you stay down at the site? Did you try to make your way back to 65? Like I always wondered what the guys who were in the
Yeah. Well, it was the longest tour, you know.
Yeah.
Once the black cloud passed, 65, we tried to regroup. We're trying to find one another. You can actually see me on the French documentary, the filmmakers. You'll see 65 Engines patch come across the screen, and you can hear me saying 65 control, 65 nozzle to 65. And I don't think I'm using the radio at all. I'm just trying to find my guys. But you hear me on the French documentary. If anybody's revisiting that thing,
that's where that booming voice comes in handy.
I don't know how booming it was then, man. It was pretty scratched up.
Yeah.
But like many of the others that survived that collapse, our eyes were shot. Things were in our ears, our nose. So we're all walking up pretty much the west side there, and come across some ambulances that were administering water to everybody. Got my eyes cleaned out. And, I think that was where we regrouped as a company as we're walking up. At that point, the officer said, let's go back and see what we can do. And, as to the pile, which wasn't named the pile just yet, but to the collapse. And we were stopped at that point by a chief or somebody who said, everybody that was involved in the collapse needs to go up to Stuyvesant High School to take a head count. And so we were turned around and had to make our way up to Stuyvesant High School, and basically waited there for numerous hours to be enumerated.
That's interesting. I'd never heard that before. And in my last episode, I had Lila, who was a student at Stuyvesant during 9/11, to talk about all the health issues that the kids who went there are going through now.
Right.
And that's just one more thing that building was used for. It was used as a morgue. It was used as a hospital, a cafeteria, right? I mean, it was always
yeah. And so it's about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. They had us file in to the auditorium.
Wow.
Where that's when they started the enumeration of us. I can recall them saying, 65, we thought you were dead.
Yeah. Well, from the outside, before we even got there, we were being told 700-800 guys are dead.
Right.
Like we had, and then, I'm sure you saw that list that was going around. It was like, it was crazy. Just basically you thought everybody you knew was dead.
My brother Ricky, he was supervising fire marshal at the time, and was at Brooklyn base, and he had gotten the word that I was dead.
Yeah, I would have assumed it too if I knew you were at work in Manhattan. And for you younger listeners, in 2001, not everybody had a cell phone. I had one because I was one of the younger guys there, but I would say maybe in my firehouse, like less than half of the guys actually had a cell phone. So it was a lot of cell phone sharing. And I believe there was only one cell company that actually had service from there. So everyone was going to whoever it was, Sprint or Verizon, whoever it was, that was actually getting calls out. So you weren't getting in touch with your family. And you certainly weren't going to walk uptown to find a payphone. So nobody knew anything.
That's a good segue to, I was waiting on the wall across from Stuyvesant High School. I did have a cell phone at the time, and I wasn't getting any service, but the payphones was still there. And I didn't have any change on me.
Of course.
But being a kid from Great Kill, Staten Island, used to love to play with the payphones in town and knew how to make a collect call.
Now I have to explain.
To this day. It was like star 662 or some silliness back then. But I was able to make a collect call, and the operator had said there's no lines going like to Staten Island where I was from, and so I said, well, can you direct a call to Islip, Long Island? And I reached out to my cousin Abigail in Long Island. Now, I didn't even have her phone number. Like, probably wasn't even in my phone.
Right.
But they were able to get in touch with her. And that's how I got word to my family that I was alive and well. And I had said to her, listen, reach out to your cousin Ricky, because I don't know if he's working, if he's down here. Just see if he's all right, and you can let him know I'm all right. And that's how I got word out anyway, was actually utilizing a payphone.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think my brother Joe, who wasn't on the job, who worked down at Goldman Sachs, we didn't get in touch with him for like a couple of days, you know, like he walked all the way to Hoboken or something, you know. It was like phones were out everywhere, and you know, me and Andy were a little busy, so it was hard to find everybody, you know, to do a head count like you just said. And this isn't just for first responders, for people listening. Like, a lot of us, especially in Staten Island, like a lot of people work in Lower Manhattan or work in municipality positions or whatever, you know, a lot of Wall Street. So a lot of people were missing, you know, where, I mean, I think we took the biggest hit as it is. But so it wasn't just us scrambling, you know, like my wife's family, they was sitting by the phone. In many ways, they're still sitting by the phone, you know? So that I think that's a big part of 9/11 that gets lost, is that the waiting, you know. I think a lot of people had that feeling that probably still hasn't gone away, you know, that waiting for the I'm okay phone call. But it's pretty cool that you got one out, you know, thankfully. Thankfully many people did survive, right? On the bright side, we did evacuate tens of thousands of people. But all right. Well, I appreciate you going through all that and telling everybody about it.
Well, that's the day. You know, we didn't have a rig to get back. But we were cut loose around the 5 o'clock hour, 6 o'clock hour, and had to commandeer a vehicle. There was a lot of support companies from out of the 5 boroughs that were coming down. They were all, I believe, coming through the Rock, Randall's Island.
Jersey too. They were staging in Jersey. All of Staten Island was covered by Jersey. From what I remember going to, right before I got on the bus, I was at one of those firehouses on the North Shore, and there were 2 yellow rigs in there. I couldn't tell you where they were from, but I looked at it, I was like, it's nice you're here, but there's no way you're hooking that thing up to one of our hydrants. You know,
right.
They don't match up. But,
yeah.
I think, and not only that, but a lot of the construction companies were giving their pickup trucks and their vans and their tools. You know, my brother was in 131, and they rolled in in a pickup truck full of, you know, some guys, whole tool supply. So
the local roofer, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So I actually, because, you know, everybody's fatigued across the board. Everybody that was there, just from sitting and waiting. And you know,
now you're processing what you just witnessed.
There's no chain of command really running things there.
Well, we now know why. I mean,
of course, now we know why.
Right.
So I grabbed. There was a bus, I guess, that came from Randall's Island, and all types of guys coming off from all different units from probably upstate New York.
Yeah, well,
And I
got
said
a
to
lot
the
of
kid,
sock
listen,
guys.
I said to the kid, listen, we got to get back to Midtown Manhattan. You're going that way. Can you take us? And he's like, oh, I got report. Listen, we're coming on. If you'd like me to drive, I'll drive this bus. So now I wind up taking, guys from 16 and 7, 21 engine, 65 engine, and a whole bunch of other companies from up in Midtown. We all got on this bus, and that's how we all got back to our quarters, was because there was no transport.
Yeah, no, I remember.
Guys that didn't have a rig, we were on our own basically. So yeah, the next morning, I made my way home to Staten Island, and the subways weren't running past Chambers Street. I might even be further up, Canal probably, and had to walk to the ferry to get the ferry. And every third block was a military presence, and they checked your credential. And it was a horror walking through that. You're walking through Beirut, and took the ferry home. And it was a lot of guys like me trying to make it home that survived it all. And companies from Staten Island were taking the ferry home after working all night there.
That's how I got home.
Yeah. So that was a crazy, crazy thing, man. Crazy time. Yeah.
So, you guys what did they do? Did they bring you guys another rig? Like, how did you guys get back in service? I always wondered that, because 216, we got our rig back. Even though it was there, it was still operational.
Yeah, I don't think we had a rig for at least a week. And 65 is a high pressure pumper,
right?
Third stage. I know a lot of Seagraves are actually high pressure, but this 65 is one of 7 at that time. I don't know what the rigs are like today, but one of 7. Couple in Queens, the bulk in Manhattan that go to a third stage. And we had a third stage from chauffeur training school that I guess they were trying to figure out how to get 65 a high pressure pumper. And so we went without for about a week. And at that time, it was all about the recovery anyway.
Right. So you guys so who was manning your area? Like, what, just the other companies around you were filling in, or they relocate?
Rob, I really don't know.
No,
I don't have that information.
Right. You're busy.
But we were working ABC. What were we doing? 12-hour shifts.
Where I was, we were on AB, but we had a rig, so we had to man. 5 or 6 of us had to stay and man the rig, and everybody else would go down for the recovery.
Right. I do recall doing hammer teams. Where we would cover 2-block radius, be an officer and a fireman with just a basic set of tools, and resetting class 3s, because that's our bread and butter up there in Midtown.
Yeah.
Class 3s. Like I said earlier, we got pieces of our rig back in a couple of days before Christmas 2001. And I think we had the third new rig, which was a high pressure. I don't think it was initially high pressure. The high pressure was coming, but we got a new rig. It was a 2002 Seagrave, and I think it was a regular pumper. Shortly in the new year, and then we were issued the one that's in the picture behind me, high pressure pumper.
Now,
I'm sorry for all the buffs. I don't know. I don't know the numbers. What
that's all right.
Seagrave it
That's all
was.
right. They know. Don't worry.
For the old timers watching it, if you remember 65 in the early 80s, we had the lime green federal pumper,
I've seen the pictures.
which they tried out. I think there were 4 of them on the job. That didn't last too long, though. American La France, I think it was.
So,
yeah.
Let's fast forward a little bit because, I mean, I know you pretty well. We've we've been friends for a while now.
Yeah.
And I know that from what I know about you, and I don't know about the other guys in your firehouse, the rig wasn't the only thing that came back in pieces, right? I think you guys, not just 65 engine. I think all the guys that were there in the initial collapse never came back the same, and they were all over the place from what I remember emotionally, and that's just what they were showing in the firehouse. So I don't know what was going on in private,
Sure.
I know this is something you're open with me, at least, about. So how long did it take for you to realize that you were in pieces or that you needed to put yourself back together? Because it had to take a little while, right? Because it was.
Oh, it took years.
Yeah.
It took years. And, I got married in 2004. I got engaged right after 9/11. I had the ring and was waiting for an opportune moment, probably Valentine's Day 2002.
Right.
I think we had planned a trip to Jamaica that week or the following week, September, and that got canceled, of course. But yeah, got married 2004. It was probably, I actually ran in the New York City Marathon in 2006. Did pretty good, 11-minute miles.
All right.
But I think that was the catalyst for my comeuppance with 9/11. Whereas my health began to deteriorate. I was a member of the FDNY ceremonial unit and played taps at many a funeral. I had joined the ceremonial unit in August of 2001, and as bugler number 2. And fast forward to 2007, around that time, I noticed my playing of the taps was not as good as it once was. And didn't know why. And I don't know if we were doing the lung tests at that time. I don't recall. But it was a lung test in 2008 that determined that my lungs were shot. Not really shot, but I know a few guys that are carrying around an oxygen tank. Right. My lungs weren't there yet. But probably if I stayed around a little longer, they might have gotten there. But yeah, as bugler number 2 for the FDNY ceremonial unit, it wasn't going too well for me in 2008. And that, I think, was when things started to shut down for me mentally. And, started to see the shrink, as per the fire department. And then there were a combination of things. We lost a fellow in the firehouse, 40-year member, Willie T. Franklin. He retired and died of cancer. And then we had a member, Marty Hurley, who took his own life. And then one of my brothers who was in the North Tower fell off a roof doing side work, installing solar panels. And with that, I had lost my father-in-law and my father all in about a year and a half's time.
And this is right when you retired, right? So
this is before I retired.
Okay.
This is when it all started, the shit hitting the fan, if you will, mentally. And that's what they say about mental concerns, right? They don't really come up right to your face. They take a lot of time. And it certainly took a lot of time for myself. My brother Rick, who retired as a supervisor and fire marshal, he was the investigative marshal on the Father's Day fire. And he says that's what put him out. After investigating that job, he put his papers in. He was the lead marshal at the dump on Staten Island for 9/11, when they were sifting through all the stuff, bringing all the stuff to the dump.
I did a tour there. That could not have been fun to go to every day.
So, he says those memories combined with the Father's Day, writing that thing up. He did a little time with the shrink as well. And
sure.
That was a big problem with him. He kind of had a job like you did, Rob, up in Harlem. He took a HUD door to the head. After a fucking fireball. Excuse my language.
That's all right. I curse.
There's a lot to curse about, isn't there?
There is.
When discussing these things. But mental illness is there. And if you don't strike while the iron's hot, you're going to run into a lot of problems. And I think I caught it in time. The mental combined with the physical ailments. I was on and off the job due to the lungs for a good 2 years, 2008 to 2010. And, my final job, I putting out a car fire in front of the New York Public Library on Fifth Avenue, and took a feed, and I passed out at the panel supplying water. They were calling me Pompeii Boy because the officer couldn't get me on the radio, and they found me on the panel,
I never heard that. That's a good one. That tells you
that was
how caring we are to our brothers in need.
But I think that was I know I did. I had a job on the west side that I pumped water into building. But I think that might have been that week. That was my last job. That's when I had to hang it up. And I went to the excuse me.
DJ
I went to the rack unit, 175 truck, East New York. That was a lot of fun.
A little different.
Those guys catch work.
Yeah.
But that was the end. I think that was my last tour of duty was there. I worked at the Rock a little bit, opening and closing the gate for nobody because there were no classes there.
Right.
But mental health is, if you think there's something wrong and you're thinking right, you got to go talk to somebody.
Right.
Don't have to be a shrink.
I think the problem is a lot of people don't think there's something wrong. I think, you happen to be married to a doctor, which has to help. But some guys, they're not willing to. I think the last person to see it is you, right? Like, I think that in my own experience, other people realized that I had problems, even my physical problems, before I did. Like my brothers or my wife. My brother Joe was the first. He noticed that there was something wrong with me physically before I did, with the shaking and
Mm,
all the neurological issues. I can
right.
remember that conversation, and it was just like I didn't think anybody else noticed, so it must be real.
Yeah. Yeah.
What about the other guys you worked with? Do you know how they're doing? Like, how were the other guys who were in the collapse?
Yeah. They don't talk about it,
Yeah.
which they should.
Mhm.
We do a yearly get together. The COVID kind of tamped that down a bit. So I haven't seen the guys I've been with in the tower in quite some time. I've been on the phone with them, but I haven't seen them personally. And, we don't talk about it. That's not something we talk about. And they're all the guys, too. Like Lieutenant Piambino and another guy on my firehouse, Harry Cardio, they were in NAM. Experienced guys.
Right.
So, their experience allows them to, we don't talk about this kind of thing.
Right.
It's another generation.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry to drop names, boys, if you're seeing this, but this is life,
Yeah.
this is
No.
where we're at.
We do it out of love and respect. We're not
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
That's tough. So I mean, I've noticed. I don't know if you've noticed. The job seems to be changing in that regard. It seems like even on social media, the brothers and sisters are talking about the stuff that they're seeing more.
Right.
Because obviously bad shit has happened since 9/11. Happened to both of us.
Yeah.
After 9/11, it didn't. Fires didn't stop burning. People didn't stop dying.
Well, I can relate this to you. I last week I worked the police officer, Detective Mara's funeral with the FDNY canteen, which was set up on 44th between 5th and 6th. We probably fed 20,000 people that day. But ceremonial unit put out the bat signal for some retired guys to come in because they needed hands after the first funeral. So I stepped up. I got involved, and the guys are talking more. They certainly are talking more about their experiences, not just 9/11.
Yeah.
Like I was talking to a lieutenant who relayed his time getting on the job and the hurdles that he had to overcome to get on the job. And, he spoke about, feelings that guys never would share from when I got on the job anyway,
Yeah.
So I think you're right. Guys are talking about it. Even older guys that are still on the job, they're talking about their feelings more.
Right. Or at least realizing that it's important to, even if you don't talk about it, you have to acknowledge it. Right.
Yeah.
I got a text from a buddy from one of my old companies the other day, and he was listening to one of my episodes. And he told me that he had a hard time with the counseling unit, but talking about it, with the guys, it really helped them, and I think at the very least, that's what you got to do. You got to talk to somebody. But I agreed with him. I always found it easier to talk to people who've gone through the same thing. I think that's just human nature.
Yeah.
And we're lucky because I actually have a brother who experienced the same things that I have. So I don't even, I don't have to explain it as much as, when you go into a counselor who didn't live through what you lived through. It's hard, it adds another layer of having to.
Yeah, I know when my brother and I speak about it, too, you lived through it, you understand. Mm-hmm. When we're telling stories of such, right. Absolutely. Yeah.
All right, man. Well, that was a long episode, but I think people out there need to hear it. As I said, I'm going to keep bringing up 9/11 throughout the year because it's not something we should just talk about once a year. And it's important with everything going on in the fire service right now. Everything from fatal fires to losing over a dozen children to a firefighter getting shot and killed while operating.
Terrible.
There's a lot of stuff going on out there, and I think there's a lot of people who can learn from your experience, and how you dealt with things and how you kept trucking, as they say.
You need to grab an old guy, an old timer from who's like 80 years old, Rob, from I don't know, from Alphabet City or something.
Well, I had an 89-year-old from 20 Truck on, Don Blaskovich. Go back and listen to that episode. He was at the fatal Worcester Street fire. And but he wasn't getting into the emotional stuff. We'll leave it at that. But he was.
If you think about the Warriors, though, you hear. I can recall hearing all these stories about guys getting booby traps, right?
Yep.
The booby traps in all the abandoned buildings and stuff. I think that killed Al Ronaldson, right? The false floor.
Yeah, they were like putting carpets over holes in the floor and stuff like that.
Yeah. Crazy.
Yep, there's crazy people out there, but fortunately, there are still good people out there willing to sacrifice themselves and put up with the craziness to help everybody else, right?
Well, keep on keeping on doing this, Rob. Absolutely.
Yeah. What else am I going to do?
Enjoy those children of yours.
Well, it's actually our anniversary today, so we'll see.
Beautiful.
So we got a little celebration today, but you've probably seen Al's face before. He's in my pictures on social media. We do go to Ranger games together. Al, myself, and two other guys have been doing this for, I don't know, about almost a decade now, right?
Yeah.
And the boys are looking good this year. So
sure are. Let's go Rangers.
So stuff like that is what helps, right? That helps me. That helps you, I know. So find something.
Absolutely.
If you're out there and you need help, talk to somebody. But you can't hold it in. But find something you love to do.
There's life after the fire service.
Absolutely. And thanks for coming on. And if you haven't heard Al Barry on the radio, go check him out on YouTube, because I was checking him out before. There's some funny stuff on there.
Thank you.
And send me those pictures and we'll share them with everyone so they can get a better idea of what we're talking about.
Will do. Thanks for having me, man.
All right. Thanks for coming on, dude. And I'll see you in a couple weeks.
Much love, Rob.
All right. Later, bro.